Welcome to Lawn Rush. In this video, I'm going to talk about why the Ford Super Duty F250, F350 is the superior plow truck compared to a Chevy. I guess we could say Dodges are just as good too, with this respect, but I just want to talk about why the Ford is a superior plow truck compared to the Chevy. So there's our plow. It's a Western whiteout. We got some snow blowers over there, and the number one reason why I think this is a superior truck to the Chevy is got to be the solid axle front end. So let's take a quick look under here at the suspension of the front end, and what you see is a Dana 60 front end. Now this is extremely strong solid axle. Generally you find Fords have a better weight carrying ability of the front end, but aside from that, you also have the benefit of having a solid front axle, which gives you a lot better geometry when it comes to carrying a plow, carrying a lot of weight across the front end. The reason for that is because an independent suspension has control arms which angle, whatever angle they're at when they're at rest. Then you go ahead and you load that suspension, and basically the distance between the front wheels changes. They either move apart or closer together because the ride height was lowered by the plow. The problem with that is, with the independent front suspension, is that changes the alignment of the vehicle, which could cause some scrubbing or some darting. Generally you won't notice anything, but it will put a little more pressure on your hub bearings and cause more wear over the long run. With the Ford setup, you have your gearbox right here, your steering gearbox right there, with a tie rod going over to one hub, and then one massive tie rod that goes from this hub all the way over to that hub. So no matter how much you load your front end, you won't change the geometry of the front end, and it won't work against itself while going down the road, if that makes any sense. So solid front axle is definitely better. So yeah, you get better tire wear, you get longer life. You could throw a plow on this thing and you could drive around with it all winter, as long as you got your proper ballast. You still need a ballast, but that simple fact is why a lot of times when you configure a truck, a GMC or a Chevy, a lot of times if you go for a diesel, you can't get a big plow. Generally speaking, you can put any plow on a Ford, diesel, gas, whatever. The diesel on the Ford weighs about 200 or 300 pounds more than the gas option, but when you get a Chevy, that extra weight really hurts because the front end's just not all there to carry diesel, plow, all that stuff. So generally you're limited to a gas engine unless you really spec it right. Still have to make sure that you have the proper ballast even with the Ford product. You got to put with a plow like this, you got to put at least 400 pounds behind the rear axle, effectively bringing the weight back down over the rear. Because when you hang that 1,000 pounds off the front, you're transferring not only that 1,000 pounds to the front axle, but you're pulling the weight that's usually on the rear axle is being transferred to the front axle as well. So Ford's definitely the way to go. Generally you don't get a locking rear end. You don't get a locking rear end, a posi rear end. You get it locking, but you have to pop the button out in order to lock it. And the way you do that is you just pop this out like that, and it locks the rear. Where GM, a lot of times you get a posi. You can option a Ford with a posi, but honestly, I don't know why you want that in a snow plowing application. In my opinion, it's better just to have an open diff in the rear, and that way you can get around corners a lot better, and tight areas you can maneuver better with the open rear. And if you need it to be locked, you can pop out the locker, and generally you don't have that issue. Generally you don't need it to be locked. So I think the open diff is even better anyway. But yeah, you still need your ballast. And Chevy, I would run extra ballast in a Chevy just because you want to take as much weight off your front end as possible. Because whenever you add your weight behind the rear axle as far back as possible, you're effectively removing weight from your front end. Here's what we use. We've been using these bags of tube sand now for a couple of years, and they're still good. The bags are just starting to get torn up after 3 years. But we run about 600 pounds behind our rear axle. Brings the back end down. It helps to relax the front end, take some weight and stress off the front end. Anyway, guys, that's why the Super Duties are the best plow trucks compared to the Chevys. Dodges are also good because Dodge, I believe, runs a solid front axle as well. Anyway, thank you for watching and have a great day. Comment below and hope to hear from you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.